Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about what I learned while modeling these 5 models in Blender throughout the week. These are considered low to mid poly, and I think you'd see these kinds of models in PS2 games from the early 2000s. There's not a whole lot to talk about these models, but I'll still try to explain a few things I learned or figured out. So starting with the first model here, this is a male character and I followed a tutorial series by MMCG channel to make this character. I'll leave a link to their videos in the description if anyone is interested. The videos are entirely in Japanese and he models a female character, so I had to make some changes to my male model here. But the overall process is very similar and I used the exact same technique for all the models this week. Except the head you saw earlier, but I'll get to that later. This model has 952 faces, including the hands, feet, and this low poly head. The goal was the torso and the limbs. I added the head, hands, and feet just to make it look a little more finished. The main challenge with this and the rest of the models was getting the shape right while also keeping the poly count minimal. The topology was already figured out by the tutorial, so I didn't have to worry too much about that. For this model, I had one reference image of the front view, so the side view was something I had to pull from my own head. I have some idea about what human bodies look like, so I think the side view turned out to be pretty decent. I think my experience with drawing has been helpful in this case. I don't want to talk much about the hands and feet because those were not the main goal with this exercise. I think I'll focus more on those parts later because I think they require extra attention, especially the hands. Same goes for the head. The head is the most important part of a character in my opinion, so I want to put an extra effort into learning heads separately. Lastly, I added a little multi-resolution modifier to this model and tried sculpting some more anatomical details on this model, just for fun. I winged the anatomy entirely, so it is obviously not super accurate. I just wanted to see what it would look like. Moving on to the second character here, this is a female model, as you can probably tell. I followed the same tutorial I mentioned earlier to model this character as well. This model ended up with a total of slightly more than 1600 faces. The main reason it has more faces than the previous model is because the hands in this model are more detailed and have more faces than the last one. I think this is a slightly more accurate representation of the poly count a model like this is supposed to have. Of course, this model is still missing a face and the feet aren't super detailed, but I think you get the idea. As you can see, this character has a pretty remarkable chest, and that is because I had this image as a reference. I think it looks pretty silly and unrealistic, and I don't really like how it turned out, but it was fun. Just like the last model, the goal with this one was also just the torso and the limbs, but I ended up spending more time than I'd like for simple exercises like this. Generally, I don't like spending too long with stuff like this because then I just end up getting too attached to my work, which I don't think is a good idea when I'm making these models for practice. Anyway, moving on. The next model is this little anime head. You might recognize this character from the anime Naruto, and I modeled her just for fun. My goal with this was to make a head that looks finished no matter how terrible it might be. And to be honest, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. I've never modeled anything this finished before, so I'm pretty proud of myself for this. Of course, this doesn't mean that it can't be improved. For one, the topology isn't all that great. I learned this modeling technique by stalking Rukikuri extensively on Twitter, watching videos by Shanzo, Kumo Blender, and a few other people on YouTube. I'll leave links to all of them in the description. I think they're absolutely brilliant artists, and you should definitely check their stuff out if you're interested in modeling anime characters. But going back to my model here, you can see the nose area right here looks pretty weird. I was having a hard time figuring out how to model this area, and this is the solution I could come up with at that moment. I probably would have come up with a better solution if I'd spent more time on this. The hair at the back is also absolutely horrible, and I'm not sure how to model that part properly. This model has 6600 faces, including the hair, eyes, eyelashes, and eyebrows. And I also UV unwrapped and painted the textures on her myself, which was pretty interesting. This is what the texture map looks like. I know this is still pretty horrifying to look at, but I think it's an improvement from last time. So we're on the right track here, hopefully. There are no ears in this model because I have absolutely no idea how to model ears and fit them in with this topology. The clumps of hair at the front of her head were done using curves, and I don't have much experience with curves, so it didn't turn out too good, but I think for this model it looks pretty decent. Lastly, in case you were wondering about the shader, this is what her shader setup looks like. This is a slightly modified version of the shader setup I learned in one of Daniel Kruder's videos, and I'll link to it in the description if you're interested. I think I'll also make a video about it myself sometime in the future. Okay, for the last two models, I have a male and a female model again, and this time I think they're slightly better than the previous ones. I decided not to model the rest of their bodies because I didn't want to spend too much time on these models. I think the shapes on these look much better than the ones before. I think their shapes look slightly more realistic as well. The male body has 482 faces and the female body has 576 faces. And overall, I'd say they're an improvement. But yeah, there's not much else to talk about, I guess. I'm really happy about my progress so far. I know I'm not a complete beginner at this, but it's still pretty exciting to see myself progressing even more. As for the future, I've been kind of interested in sculpting, so maybe the next few videos are going to be about that. I'm thinking about sculpting different body parts each week and sharing those here on YouTube, but we'll see where it goes. So I hope this was enjoyable to watch, and I'll see you later.